Deana Helmy, who stepped up, a very, very talented and, well-known professional from our community in the mental health space. I want to introduce her. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the director of counseling services at ICNA Relief's Counseling Center in Fullerton. She also works for the County of Orange in mental health and recovery services. Deana holds a Master's of Science in Counseling from California State University, Fullerton, and a Master's in Business Administration from the University of California, Irvine's Paul Mirage School of Business. Deana's passion is in positive psychology and personal development. She uses her skills to promote strengths-based growth mindsets that empower the community to challenge biases and practice humility, resiliency, and connectedness. Thank you, Deana. And I am going to spotlight you wherever you are. Where are you? Oh, there you are.
I'm here now.
Okay, there you are. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I'm going to attempt to do this. So if you'll bear with me as I still attempt to figure out how to do presentation.
You got this.
Okay. You see it, everything. Okay, alhamdulillah. So I just wanted to thank all of you for the opportunity to get to be with you, because I honestly, the work that Olive is doing in terms of connecting seniors and creating an environment and a space for you all to come together and support each other. I heard a little bits and pieces of a accountability partner or a buddy, and that's such a beautiful concept to be able to promote wellness as we go through life, right? We're all in the process of aging, and so as we age gracefully, inshallah, that is the goal, and to do so with support and spaces like and organizations like all of that. Alhamdulillah, we are very blessed to have in the community. So Jazakallah khair, Zainab, for extending the opportunity to be here with you all, and for all of you for being here on a Monday morning. So yay for Mental Wellness Mondays or Mental Health Mondays. Both are good. So today, inshallah, we're going to talk about cognitive and emotional health and wellness. And we'll attempt to make this as interactive as possible. So I know that the chat is there, as we're going along with questions. If there's anything that you want to share or chime in on, I'd love for that to be a space that that we can enhance our learnings together, inshallah, God willing. Okay, so our very brief agenda, hopefully, is that we will tackle the 8 dimensions of wellness, sort of a big picture of that, and then we'll shift into cognitive health and wellness, what it is and ways to improve it, as well as emotional health and wellness, also what it is, ways to improve it, and then we'll open it up for questions. So what is wellness? When they look at wellness, it's more than just not being sick, right? Sometimes we think of like, okay, it's just as long as I'm not sick, I'm well. However, it actually entails having a purpose in life, engaging in active involvement in satisfying work and play, having joyful and meaningful relationships, looking at the healthy body and living environment, and happiness. And that's according to SAMHSA's definition. They look at these dimensions. Now, these dimensions are not, well, we'll go into identifying the exact 8 ones in the next slide, which is there's the 8 dimensions of wellness. So they look at it in terms of physical, which a lot of us are very familiar with, right? This is the one where we're like, okay, this just means that I'm taking care of my body and staying healthy. We have social, and this is looking at our relationships and whether or not we enjoy spending time with people. So we hope to look at ways that we also contribute to community in this space. Spiritual, it's finding purpose and value and a meaning. And sometimes people get this from their faith, yet people get their spiritual wellness in different forms. So religion can be a source for that, and that sometimes provides the framework for the purpose of life and being able to kind of engage in that space. Vocational. So a lot of times people think like, oh, if I'm retired, then, you know, this aspect of wellness doesn't really count. But this is more than just our paid work or what our occupation was, right? This is ways that we contribute, ways that we do meaningful work. And this could be in volunteering. It's something that gives us a sense of personal satisfaction, and it enhances our life. And so a lot of times people will find opportunities to volunteer even when they are working, because for some people who may be still working, work isn't always the place that they find the most, that they feel that they're contributing the most in. So this is a way to be able to enhance their life. Financial, very clear, so it has to do just with understanding money. Environmental, this is looking at our earth and our space that we live in, wanting to be mindful of our footprint on this planet. And then intellectual, this one is our ability to grow intellectually and to continue to learn throughout life. And then emotional is understanding and accepting our feelings and the feelings of others. And it's really important that we are able to identify those feelings so that we can increase our sense of well-being. One second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, as we move on. Why am I not? Okay, so we're going to focus. The reason I shared that was to put it more in context of what cognitive and emotional health are for us, and that's what we're gonna sort of delve a little bit deeper in. So we can see that it's part of overall wellness, and oftentimes those are things that that they tie together. So actually, I'm going to go back over here. Can someone maybe give an example, or put it in the chat where you see some of these might be connected together. If there's a challenge in one, it may affect more than just one space. So we can put an example. For example, if a person is struggling in the vocational, maybe they're retired, they're not engaged in a lot of meaningful work, could that affect their emotional well-being? Just thumbs up or thumbs down it, or put it in the chat. Yes. So I think I heard a yes. So that can affect financial, right? Maybe now financial wellness is impacted by not having maybe a steady source of income, or not having planned for retirement too well. That can affect emotional, which can also affect physical. So they're sort of all intertwined. And the hope and the goal is that when we focus on improving certain dimensions of wellness, that there is a spillover effect, and they help improve other aspects of wellness as well. So today we're going to focus, like I said, on the intellectual / cognitive, as well as the emotional. So our intellectual cognitive health is the ability to clearly think, learn, and to remember. And so this is one aspect of overall brain health, right? Brain health refers to how well a person's brain functions in the space of cognitive health, motor function, emotional function, and tactile function. So motor function has to do with how well we can make and control our movements, including balance. And I know that there's an aspect to Olive as well that focuses on healthy mind, healthy body. So there is that part of the physical piece as well. We have emotional function, which is how well we interpret and respond to emotions. And this is both pleasant and unpleasant ones. And there is a hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and Hanit? No?
Hamid, do you want to go up and say something or add something to the chat? Okay, I think you can move forward.
Okay. And so this is our ability to respond to both pleasant and unpleasant emotions. And so sometimes we think of emotional health as that everything has to be positive, and we're kind of looking at we're working on making sure that we don't experience negative, what we would call negative emotion, yet it's how we deal with it, right? We're going to feel different senses of feeling. I know I hopped on a little earlier, and there's a lot of heavy emotions too that are part of life and part of the process and the journey that we have here on this earth, and it's being able to find a channel for it. Tactile has to do with how we respond to like actual physical sensations of touch, right? And this could be pressure and pain and so forth. But for our purpose today, we're going to be looking at the cognitive health in the area of brain health. And there was a study that was conducted at UC Riverside, and they found that older adults can achieve the same cognition as undergrads. So undergrads are people that are usually what, in 18 to 22 years of age. And we tend to think of cognitive health as people age and become, get older, that it either stays the same or it declines. And so this is one of the few research that is coming out that's showing that no, actually older adults have the ability to continue to enhance and improve their cognitive function. And in some of the tests that they've done, it's even the same as undergrad. So there's not much difference. And for this study, what they did is they had people almost engage in like a classroom style learning activity where they were surrounded with support and ability to kind of, take risks and learn new skills together. So it wasn't just learning one skill, they combined multiple skills together. So the main point I can provide the link for the study if you want to read it later. The main point was that even as older adults, we're able to have, to improve our cognition and have it actually get better. It doesn't have to just stay the same. Okay. So our ways to improve our cognitive ability. So when we think of cognitive ability, we're thinking of our ability to concentrate and to keep our memory intact, right? Because sometimes even younger adults, if they're preoccupied or they're worried about several things, or if they're going through a hard time, they may also experience challenges with memory. So ways to improve our cognitive ability, which is our memory and concentration, is eating foods that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids and incorporating more of a plant-based diet, engaging in regular exercise. And so exercise, basically, it boosts the blood flow to the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for memory. Practicing good sleep habits and meditation. This allows the brain to heal and repair itself, right? That's what we do when we go to sleep. Our body, subhanAllah, our body is still working and it's very active in repairing itself. And so this improves our memory, our decision-making, and our attention span. Managing stress, they've seen that people who have higher levels of stress tend to have more cognitive challenges. Socializing, friendships and positive relationships help protect, and they help protect our brain, and they help prevent against memory loss. And challenging your brain, taking up hobbies, right? Anything that requires us to learn something new keeps it basically keeps our brain growing in terms of the neural connections that happen, and that supports us for a healthier brain. So the first four that are listed here, those are things that sort of, they kind of tie very closely with physical. So it shows that physical mind-body relationship that we have. The last two, the socializing and challenging our brain, those are more directly related to the cognition. And so what happens with our ability to socialize is that the friendships that we create, that's something that basically it causes us, like you've seen when you hang out with people, you have to sort of read the room. You have to see how they're feeling, what their emotions are. So we're identifying emotions, we're adapting to further benefit that relationship. So those are things that involve our brain very actively. And then challenging our brain. This is, picking up new hobbies and new learning activities. So what are some things, before I go to the next slide, what are some things maybe that you have done for that maybe, you've thought of in terms of challenging your brain? Has anyone picked up new hobbies or learned something new? Yes.
I have been knitting of late, I started knitting. This was something I knew, but I had given it up for some. When the children grew up, I didn't have to knit anything for them. So, but I just started knitting recently, and it takes away my stress definitely.
Awesome. Yay. So
And I
that
don't
is
know whether it helps my brain or not. Um, I don't know, because I've started forgetting. I'm so scared of that. God forbid it might become worse. But knitting is something that I think will help my mind, brain a little active, and maybe it helps.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a real life, example here. So this is perfect because even if it's something that you used to do before, you knew how to do it in the past, you sort of gave it up, the picking it up again, right? Now it's like your brain has to remember pieces and put it together. That's very that's something that will keep the brain active, and it does form new neural pathways in the brain. Right? Maybe in the beginning, yes. I mean, hope in the beginning, it's more of that. You have to be more intentional with it, right? You have to be more aware. It's not just second nature like it happens when we're proficient at something. Hopefully, when you get there, it serves that stress relief, and then you pick up another hobby and learn something different. Yes. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
And I'm looking at the chat. Oh. So when I go to the chat, okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay, and yes, I'm seeing some shares over here. So Sudoku, awesome. That is great. So some of the puzzles. Joining Olive is outside of someone's comfort zone, right? And that's something that this is a new activity. And so it being outside of your comfort zone, it becomes that challenge that you get to make, you get to have, and then there's that social element to it too.
I have started doing this. It's like I don't know. It's called bananagram, and you have these tiles, and you make words. So sometimes when I'm doing it, like, oh, maybe I can do this way or that way. So it just makes me feel good. And my daughter got me into it. So yeah, it's fun activity.
Yeah, and so anything that basically gets us thinking, if you will, and it can be fun. It doesn't have to be work. And parts of the key for that is making sure it's not super easy, but it's not super difficult, because then it becomes overwhelming and then we end up causing more stress. So we want that happy middle ground, where it's enough challenge that it keeps us engaged in what we're doing. Awesome. So on the next slide. Okay, so these are some ways, right, when we talk about challenging ourselves and maybe doing something different, taking up new hobbies. So these are some ways that they found, some ideas that can help. Learning a new language. Has anyone tried to learn a new language?
No.
So we think sometimes that we lost the window if we're beyond high school, right? And really, it's the kids that are the luckiest because they can pick it up so well. But learning a new language, and I'm going to throw it out there only because it's one of my goals, inshallah, is to learn American Sign Language. So it doesn't even have to be spoken language, right? It can also be sign.
How can travel help?
Sorry. Assalamualaikum. I want to learn Arabic to try to read the Quran a little better. So I guess but it's difficult.
Yeah, and that's and so with the intention of that goal being something meaningful for you, right? And so that even that process and that journey, and I see several people want to learn Arabic, so maybe there's an Arabic class that Olive will connect everyone to.
Yeah, that's true. If it's a common thing, why not? Right.
Yeah. And then you get to learn among friends, and so that becomes safer, healthier environment too.
How can
Okay.
travel help? I just wanted to note that this one says travel.
Travel. So when we travel, we are basically we're learning new things about the world, right? Where we get to see new terrain, if you will. We're so used to maybe going to a couple of countries, we kind of know how things are, but we get to interact with people. We're learning we're learning a culture. We're learning about it. And it also helps with we start connecting different pieces in our brain. So if we're used to this is what a school needs to look like, and now we go somewhere else and the school setting looks different, now our brain has to expand in terms of what does it mean to be a school, right? Or if we're, it's so now it can look differently. And we expand our brain capacity to be able to think about different things.
I was going to say, Deana, that with travel also, like, when you learn to navigate, like how to use Uber or the local, station, the train station or the subway system, you're kind of like learning new things as you go along. So that's another part about travel, I think, that could really help
you
with
get
the
exposed
cognitive.
to so many things, you learn. Of course, learning, it's a learning process, travel.
Yeah. So it's learning even, yes, absolutely, Zaina. That's actually a great point in terms of transportation. Here we're, especially Southern California, where it's just the car. And over there, it's like, okay, maybe it's Uber, but even sometimes in places where they have public transportation that's much more accessible, learning how to read, the train schedule or...
We just learned how to use the OC bus.
That is so awesome. That's so awesome. And now Orange County, they're doing the OC streetcar is a new in Santa Ana to go from the train station to downtown.
Wow.
So I work in downtown Santa Ana, so we watched the progression over the past couple of years of what this is looking like. But it's supposed to be, it's going to be on the street with cars. So the rail is, it exists there. So it'll be interesting because that's something that we're not used to seeing here in Southern California, especially in Orange County. That'll be pretty cool. Listening to or making music. This is something that we know that music sort of, I know this, some, people have different views with it, but even learning an instrument, it's a form of, it's a language in and of itself, and it's a different way of being, even sometimes in terms of like nasheeds, or, being able to engage in that process. It has a lot of times, especially if it's done in a group, there's a healing aspect to it. And it's, music, subhanAllah, it's very universal. And so to be able to engage, even, listening to it, someone was saying it's kind of, it's difficult to be, it's soothing, right? So it's hard to be very like depressed if we're in the process, like if we're singing nasheeds and so forth, it almost it counteracts if we're feeling down. So by focusing also, like if it's, uplifting lyrics, and a lot of times it's connected to the Prophet ﷺ, then it's something that improves our mood, and that can be helpful too. Cards, board games, electronic games. We saw a couple of examples of that, the bananagrams and the and Sudoku. A lot of those puzzles, they, you just, you at your own pace get to sit there and interact and solve. We're solving for something. So our brain is working towards that completion. Cultural consumption. This is sort of, we tied it a little bit with our with travel, but this isn't how, we don't have to do travel in order to do the cultural consumption. This could be from maybe watching movies in a different language, or listening to poetry, or going to museums. So these are things that, maybe we expose ourselves to something that we're not used to. And even if it's things that we are used to, maybe in our, our country of origin or our native language, being able to listen to, to read the poetry, listen to it, share it, those are things that can be helpful as well. And then the puzzles, some of those can be word puzzles, like crossword puzzles, but also even tangible puzzles. Like I don't know if that's something that practice, but even putting a puzzle together. I know now they have apps on the phone, and I got into that for a while because it's less messy, right? But there's still something to be said about actually putting together, like the tactile nature of putting together a puzzle. So, finding one that has a pretty image, a pretty picture that is soothing in the process of putting it together too. Okay. I'm reading a little bit of the question pieces. So for that's sort of our cognitive piece. So I think we'll pause it here and just kind of look at some of the questions, and then we'll shift into our emotional health aspect. So one of them is just more about making sure memory is healthy. So forgetting that there's different reasons for it, right? But the more we're able to improve our cognitive and intellectual health, that does help with the memory. So I'd always, recommend, I'm not a doctor in that sense, but I also still recommend kind of having the conversation with your primary care physician or with a doctor who specializes in being able to see what options there may be. But these are things, these are some things that do help that process as well. And someone sharing, yeah, and another way also of improving it is going back to memorizing maybe surahs that that we used to have memorized, and then because we didn't practice them, or we haven't maybe read them, or we don't read them as regularly, we may have forgotten. So those are ways also to practice strengthening and improving our cognitive health as well. Okay, I'm going to shift over to emotional health. And again, I can't emphasize enough how so many of them are connected together. And sometimes, yes, it's important to be aware of like if we notice that we're starting to forget, there's an element of there's a range where it may be just normal, we're beginning to forget things, or we're not practicing it enough. But then if we notice that it's getting a little bit more, then we want to be able to, get that addressed and looked at. So our emotional health and wellness, this is an awareness and understanding and acceptance of our feelings, right? So we have to be able to label it and understand it and accept it. And manage our emotions effectively through times of change or challenge. So it's kind of it's very loaded there, right? So it requires us to be aware of it, understand it, accept it, and then be able to manage it effectively. So oftentimes I hear people, and when I do this, kind of asking people like, is there any such thing as like a bad emotion? Or like a negative, like, can an emotion in and of itself be bad? So just your thoughts, if somebody wants to put it in the chat or share. So if like, is anger just because it's anger? Is anger a bad emotion?
Not necessarily. You are feeling something about, I mean, if you become aware that you're angry about something, then you look at it like, okay, what is making me angry? And is this real? Or is this something that I am misunderstanding or miscommunication? And then you can go from that point.
Perfect. So anger by itself is not necessarily bad. It's just giving us feedback. I call emotions our feedback mechanism, right? They're telling us about our world. They're giving us information that maybe something is not okay. So if we're feeling anger, the feeling itself, it's okay to feel angry. It's what we do with it. It's how we express it, right? And so that's the piece where we look at effectively managing it. So Does it make sense to be angry when we look at certain injustices that are happening in the world or maybe happening even locally? So certain injustices are going to get us, you know, if we're witnessing this, we're going to feel angry. And so what happens is, what are we doing with it? How are we channeling that anger? So when we look at things that influence our emotional wellness, it can be challenges with work relationships or home life, right? If we experience changes in health, that can affect our emotional wellness. Changes in relationship, and I know these are like, it's pretty broad. Retirement. This is sometimes a big one that people don't anticipate as quickly, or they just think that it's, you know, it should just be you retire, yay, everybody's celebrating. However, that can have an impact on a person's emotional wellness. Losing a loved ones, that affects our emotional wellness as well. And so we will experience, I mean, part of the fact that we are human, we're going to experience loss. We're going to experience changes in our work and I mean, and we have it. We're going to experience it with our wealth. We're going to experience it in our health. We'll experience it with people. But only constant in life is change. And so we're going to have it, right? It's no one lives in a straight line where there's no change that's happening, right? It's always the analogy sometimes with the heart monitor. When a person is connected and the fact that it's, you know, it's beating, it's that sign that there is life. And so if we get to a flat line, that's, you know, the part where, okay, we fear at that point, because well, we don't fear, inshallah, we embrace as that happens, yet that's an indication that like change, we want to see the change. We want to see the highs and the lows, and that kind of expands our ability to as we live. So some signs that people may be experiencing difficulty in emotional health, right? Because we all go through these at different points in different combinations. Sometimes there may be multiple things happening at the same time. And for the most part, people tend to be fairly resilient, right? They're able to cope. You know, we look at coping mechanisms and how a person is able to cope with these changes. What are some coping mechanisms maybe that you practice?
You accept it.
Acceptance?
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so not
yourself,
pushing back.
You engage yourself in something that will distract your mind from you.
So you find meaningful ways to connect with other things. Okay. Distraction, and sometimes that's okay. Like, so we find a space to fill the void.
Yes.
What?
Otherwise, you might keep thinking about the same thing. If you're in a different situation, if you have something else to do, then of course your mind will be totally, for some time it will be at least,
Yeah.
distracted.
What are some other coping mechanisms? Exercise.
Crying. I cry.
Prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it out.
Crying, I mean, that gives us that sense of it's a way that we release feelings, right?
Give some relief. You release your emotions.
Yeah. Sometimes praying is a way that some are able to cope.
Do something, that will give you some comfort, like doing some charitable work or helping out.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the ways that we, when people are actually feeling sad, one of the best things they can do is to go and help someone else. Because subhanAllah, we benefit, like not only is the other person benefiting from, from our help, we get to feel like we have a purpose, right? And we actually benefit as well. Sometimes people will say the person who's helping is even benefiting more, gets more out of that interaction. than others. I'm seeing here praying, walking, calling old friends. Yes, all of those are coping mechanisms. Sometimes we try to engage in what we use the coping mechanisms that we have, but sometimes we still struggle. And so some of the signs, it's important to just, to be aware of what some of those signs might be. So that way we can do something about it and be able to intervene, or at least notice it in our friends too. So we may not be going through it, but we might start noticing a person who might be having difficulty with some of their emotional health. And so this next slide is going to show us different signs that a person might be experiencing some difficulties, right? So this could be isolating themselves from friends or family. So if it's a person that, for example, you used to see always in this community, and then now they're not showing up, that's an opportunity to, to reach out and to just, ask if they're, how they're doing, just checking in on them. A person may have lower energy than usual, and we may feel this in ourselves and just be like, we may be experiencing, be much more lethargic. Sleeping or eating too much or too little. So kind of, oftentimes it'll be the opposite of the norm. Racing thoughts, if a person is just, if we're experiencing, we're just very fixated on certain thoughts that we have and we're not able to overcome, we're not able to process it differently. There might be more interpersonal conflicts than usual. There might be a lot of tension with people in the house, right? Some tension is okay, but maybe too much. It's sort of a sign that, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on inside. Feeling irritable, guilt, hopeless, worthless. So if we hear people maybe expressing things around that, or we find ourselves in that situation. Neglecting personal hygiene and personal care. And so sometimes others might notice this in us. So it's creating that environment where we can check on each other and reach out. And if we are worried about someone, and sometimes it's not just one of these, sometimes it's a couple of them put together. So if we're able to reach out and be specific in what we're noticing, then that can be an opportunity for us to, like I said, to reach out and be specific. For example, I noticed that, you're not participating, or we're not seeing you around as much. Like, is everything okay? And if we're worried, to let them know that we're worried about them. And, sometimes within certain cultures, it's, if we ask for help, then it's a weakness. And it's not a weakness, it's a strength. It really is a strength to be able to say, you know what? I need help. I'm not okay. And to ask for the support that we want. I think that's one of the goals of this community here, is to be able to do that together. Okay. What are some ways that we can work on our emotional health? There's a lot, but we'll kind of, we'll go through them quickly. And I think there's a couple that we can focus on. But living a balanced lifestyle, right? Staying connected, having this community, and being plugged in, even if sometimes we don't feel like we don't have a lot to share, but even still just show up when there's activities that are happening, because we pick up on the energy too of those around us. So, hopefully that uplifts us as well. Meditate. This can be, prayer is one way to do it. And there's other ways, sometimes even just, taking a walk in nature and just reflecting on the trees, on the animals, on the landscape, on the insects, right? Being very aware of how we all belong to something bigger and we're all connected. Be mindful of your self-talk. And self-talk is the voice that we hear when we're talking to ourselves. So I'm pretty sure we all have a voice, and usually, unfortunately, most of the time, it's not the nicest. So if we mess up, what do we say to ourselves? Do we give ourselves grace? If there's a challenge, or if there's something happening with someone else, maybe there's a struggle with them, what are we saying to ourselves? Are we saying, like, I always do this example, but let's say we're out somewhere and I walk by someone and I know them, and they don't even acknowledge me in that moment. Do I turn around and say, like, oh, they must not have seen me? Or am I more likely saying, oh, how dare they not like acknowledge me? Like, are they upset? Are they mad? What are they mad at? Did I do something wrong? Wait, what could I have done wrong? Oh my goodness, it must be. And then we go down a spiral, right? So instead of just, sometimes just asking like, oh, let's just go up and ask them like, I noticed that I walked right by and you didn't notice me. Is everything okay? They might turn around and say, oh my goodness, I didn't even see you. I was so in my head. I was thinking about how I was going to get to where I need to go on time. Or they turn around and say, yeah, actually, I'm really upset from the last time that we met. You said some hurtful things and I didn't address it. But either way, we have information and then we're able to shift, right? So a lot of times it's being aware of the thoughts that we have and what we say to ourselves and the stories we make up about situations, and then just verifying them. Setting goals, that's something that I know some of the people had mentioned, like they have some goals of things they want to do, whether it's learn a language or, even coming here to this space and being involved in the Olive community, that was a goal. And so if we set goals, we have things to work on and to look forward to. And then we want to make sure we celebrate our achievements. Sometimes we get so used to like, oh, we just have to keep going. We don't take time to really acknowledge the growth that we are going through and the little tiny wins that we have. And that's what matters, is those tiny wins. We want to learn strategies for being more resilient. And this, I think we can actually probably do a whole other talk on just resilience. Getting enough sleep and exercise, so taking care of ourselves physically. We have over here, be of service, right? This helps us find meaning. So if we can volunteer and participate in community, this helps us. And know when to reach out for help. Like I said, this is really a strength. There's nothing wrong with reaching out. Sometimes, we have a taboo of even what therapy is. And therapy is a space to try new things, if you will, right? It's having someone that you can talk to who maybe is able to see some blind spots. Like all of us, when we think of like the best athletes, right? We just had the Super Bowl yesterday, but the best athletes, like they're the best athletes. Why do they need a coach or a person, and they're there to see their blind spots because we don't always see it when we're in it. So being able to have a coach or a therapist be able to share that space with us and maybe point things out that we might not have seen, that can help. And then I put here substances in moderation, just, understanding that sometimes people will go to, they'll use this as coping tools. And I know a lot of people, for religious purposes, don't do this. And, that is amazing and wonderful. I just brought it up just to be mindful that others around us, maybe, whether it's even cigarettes, right? Or it's just using unhealthy coping mechanisms. So for us, it's substances, not at all. But in other spaces, we want to be mindful for them, right? So if there are people within our circles. And then I think I'm at my time and we are at questions. So I'm going to end it. Well, I won't end the show right now because I don't know if that's going to affect the pinning, but I wanted to provide opportunity for questions or for ideas, even maybe on, I know I mentioned a little bit of resilience, but just kind of want to throw it back at all of you right now. What are your thoughts, or what are some questions you might have?
Deana, I have a question. I know you've done a lot of talks in the past about emotional intelligence. Is there anything from there that you would like to share, which is in relevance to what we're talking today?
Yes, I can. So a lot of times we talk, so emotional intelligence, thank you. It's being like it entails being aware of our feelings, right? It's having self-awareness of ourselves and also having self-awareness of others. So a lot of times I think in when we are working with probably shows up most with family. But when we're dealing with family, we may encounter certain challenges or struggles with conversations. Being able to express our feelings is part of emotional intelligence. And oftentimes, sometimes we don't want to make people uncomfortable, so we just stay quiet. But what does that do to the relationship itself? Right? If we keep staying quiet, we keep shoving things under the rug, at one point the rug becomes a mountain, right? And someone's going to trip over it, or it's going to it has to come out another way. So being able to have awareness of our feelings, be able to practice like taking a different perspective. So I know this comes up a lot with families, is, you know, we're so used to a certain dynamic, right? I say this, they say this. So even before we talk, or sometimes before we even engage in an interaction, in our mind, we already know what they're going to say. We already know how it's going to go. So we don't create space for there to be something different. We end up with more of the same. And if we are able to have conversations, we're able to use I statements, right? Because sometimes it also looks like, well, you're always so impatient, or you have to have it your way. We put the other person on defensive. So if we're able to pause and just say, okay, I get it. Like, I'm not going to take it personal. This is what they're doing. This is the dynamic. I'm going to react differently to it. So we're not always able to control the other person. That's something that, you know, we're not able to control. We are able to control our reaction to things, and we're able to control ourselves, right? Our thoughts around it, our feelings around it, what it means. So sometimes in close dynamics, it's like, oh, they didn't put the cup back, for example. Oh, they're just, you know, they always do this, and it's because they don't care about how, you know, they don't care about the order, and they're trying to do it to bother me. When it's their way of being. So let's make a story out of it. Like, let's make a game out of it, or draw their attention to it, and just be able to assert and say, you know, I notice, like, I feel very I mean, disrespected might be a big one for a cup not being in its place, but but I feel you know, I feel dismissed, in terms of, like, I feel like my needs are dismissed when, you know, like, when things aren't in place. It's hard for me to concentrate, or it's hard for me to feel like at peace in my surroundings. So when things aren't where they need to be, it really affects me. Right. So the other person, now we can have a conversation, and it's not like, you know, why do you always? So yeah.
Yeah.
So why is
Right.
it's on
Right.
defensive.
Good point. And then there's a question in the chat, and then we'll go to Sister Zakia in a bit. How do you focus on one thing rather than moving from one thing to the other? So it's about focus.
Yeah, so there was this awful thing that people thought multitasking was a good idea at some point, and
No,
it
it's
does
not.
not happen. It doesn't have we are not able to we don't really multitask. So when we think we're multitasking, we're taking up a lot of brain space to actually shift from one thing to the other. So sometimes it is better to focus on one thing, get that done, and then move on. And maybe it's not get the whole thing done. Maybe it's you know, we give ourselves some time, because if we're not giving ourselves that time and that grace of, okay, I'm going to spend, for example, 30 minutes on this one thing, and then I'm going to shift. However much you get done in that 30 minutes, let it be. But how do you do that? I mean, I think there's just, you become aware of what it is that you want to get done. And sometimes people will do something called, like, if you have a calendar, they'll actually create like a little schedule. And so if that's something that would be helpful for you, you can, you know, you can time slot the what you're going to be working on, or what you want to do.
All right. We have Sister Zakia. Do you want to unmute yourself first before?
I'm unmuted.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, my question is, I've always grown up kind of quiet, you know what I mean? And I've noticed in life I've really had a harder time connecting. And my question is, how do you connect emotionally, you know, to a thing or a person?
So connecting emotionally, so we obviously, like people have gone through different things throughout life, right? And we put up certain barriers at the bare root, at the heart of everything is this intricate connection that we all feel. And so a piece of it is if we're able to sort of boost our empathy skills, which is part of emotional intelligence too, right? And sometimes it's practicing putting ourselves in their shoes. The more we're able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and to feel what they're feeling. I used to do this a little bit in like watching movies, right? If I put myself in one character's position, or I put myself in their shoes, it's very different if I'm the protagonist or if I'm the antagonist, right? If I'm the hero or I'm the villain, it's a very different perspective. So being able to connect to other people's feelings allows us to create that bond. We have actually something called mirror neurons. And so when we're with people, it requires us to be with them. We actually, whatever they're feeling and experiencing, our brain takes and it sort of like registers and we get that same feeling, which is why if we've ever noticed like babies, when something happens, they'll look kind of like at their mom, like if they fell, they don't necessarily always just start crying, right? Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever witnessed it, but the baby will fall and then we'll sort of look at mom and just wait for mom's reaction. And if mom's reaction is like, then you see the baby face turn that way as well. And if the mom's just kind of like, okay, like, yeah, let's get back up, they'll kind of like smile and get back up. So we tend to emulate that piece. So in connecting, I would say a piece of it is building that empathy and being graceful, like being graceful with ourselves and, taking on, finding others that we want to have a connection with, and then sometimes even sharing that.
Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to add one more piece to that. I work at an Alzheimer's daycare, and I've noticed over there they give dolls or stuffed animals to the participants sometimes, just for that touch, the tactile thing also that you were saying, Deana, earlier. So I think that's I guess a small practice, or having a pet maybe,
yes,
something to love and cuddle with, or share your emotions with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we can take one last question before we end the chat today, if anyone has one. Okay, but thank you, Deana. It looks like we have no other questions. I hope you enjoyed this experience. My dearest attendees, we have people from all over the United States. There's people from Michigan. There's people from Canada. So this is an international experience. So thank you all for attending. Next Monday, we are talking about nutrition. So we're going to be talking about eating for your brain and for your gut. So we are so blessed to have these opportunities. Like Deana mentioned, staying connected. Make sure you invite your friends, remind them, because there can only be so many reminders. Thank you, Deana, again for taking this on at such a short notice. We are so grateful. That was such a helpful and inspiring talk.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.